right. Thank you, Chairman, and members of the Commission. My name is Neil Heighton, and I'm the Special Assistant for Legislation, Policy, and Administration at the Rhode Island Department of Health. And I'm joined today by Judah Boulay, who's the Administrator for our lead poisoning prevention program at the Department. Thank you for the opportunity to give everyone an update on our progress to implement the statewide rental registry. And I want to thank Allison for her preview of the situation that we're in. And that's this first slide here. And I always like to start these presentations on our programmatic work with the what we're trying to prevent. Allison hit really the importance of preventing lead poisoning and wanted to provide some data for the Commission that in 2023, last year, there were 990 cases of children who met the CDC blood reference value of being lead poisoned. 130 of them were severely lead poisoned with 10 micrograms per deciliter over severely lead poison level. Almost all of these cases were linked to lead paint in homes, and we know this by investigations from the Rhode Island Department of Health when we're notified. Very few of them are a result of consumer product poisoning. The vast majority of them are related to lead paints in homes after investigation. Which is why the work, as Allison alluded to, is so important. Back in 2002, when the Lead Hazard Mitigation Act was passed, it required pre-78 houses to obtain lead certificates. And prior to the lead registry, despite the LHMA, in 2013, only 15 to 20% of the 125,000 estimated pre-1978 rental units had such a certificate. And the reason for this is multi-layered. So municipal enforcement is not consistent across the state. There was no mechanism to identify all pre-1978 rental units in the state. And there's no mechanism for the state enforcement of these units to the Lead Hazard Mitigation Act, which is why in 2023, the changes were made to strengthen both the Lead Hazard Mitigation Act and establish the statewide rental registry. So in 2023, it is important, and we wanted to make mention that there was a bill that had passed to remove the exemption for owner-occupied properties. So these are 2-3 unit homes where an owner occupies one floor and they rent out either the second or third floor. That exemption was removed in 2003. There are remaining exclusions in the law, just to make note of. Properties deemed lead safe or lead free that don't have any lead issues. Temporary housing and elderly housing are still exempt. And in 2023, the rental registry was established, passed in 2023. Last year, Governor McKee included funding in his budget to support the establishment and enforcement in the lead registry, which was passed by the General Assembly this July. And since then, we have been starting to build the registry. So just quickly, the requirements for all landlords in the registry. All pre-78 houses need to have a lead certificate, show compliance to the Lead Hazard Mitigation Act. All landlords, regardless of pre-78 or post-78, need to register with up-to-date contact information. There's 2 fines provided in the law. Failure to register is a $50 per month per unit fine. And failure, if you're one of the pre-78 houses, failure to provide a lead certificate is a $125 a month per unit per fine. One other important part of the law: a landlord may not evict for non-payment of rent unless the landlord has registered in the rental registry and has an applicable certificate if needed. So with that, I will hand it over to Judah, who's been doing this work for the implementation.
Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you. So we have a phased implementation for the rental registry based upon timelines that were given to us. We implemented phase 1 for September 3rd because September 1st was a Sunday of Labor Day weekend. That was to meet the statutory requirements. And the first part of the rental registry implementation was just a registration portal for landlords to register their information. And then if they had a pre-78 house and a lead certificate, to upload that and register those units fully. This met the requirements A and B of the Rental Registry Act. Our phase 2 is going to meet the remaining requirements of the Act. which is going to allow for the identification of the rental housing stock in the state of Rhode Island, which will give us a denominator of all the rental units as well as the denominator of the pre-78 rental house units available, as well as giving us full functionality to implement all phases of the act. The vendor is secured, and the second phase of the registry is in development, and we expect phase one of phase two to come to us around mid to late January. Right now, to date, of properties that have been registered, there are 6,656 fully submitted properties, which represents 38,339 units. This was as of Tuesday. There are 7,484 units which are in draft status, which means that those landlords have registered the properties but haven't been able to submit them, most likely because they're lacking lead certificates. So they've met the first requirement in terms of registering their information, but they're waiting to obtain their lead certificates. Registry was even implemented. We spent the beginning part of this year through billboards and social media campaigns, letting landlords know about the requirements of pre-1978 rental housing needing a lead certificate. The social media campaign actually won a marketing award from the vendor that did it. And then if you had driven by the billboard near this family court, you might have seen the pre-78 rental housing lead certificate billboard. Since then, we started off the campaign once the registry was implemented with organic social media, as well as a press release on September 3rd. We've been trying to work with purchasing to get some boosted social media, but that has fallen to the wayside for the time being. In September, we held a webinar through the Rhode Island Realtors Association, and we were present at 12 farmers markets. I attended the Housing Networks of Rhode Island breakfast to talk to that group, as well as answer any questions they had. We've just started radio and TV ads, which were launched in mid-November through the Rhode Island Broadcasters Association. We have a new registry billboard campaign coming out at 10 locations throughout the state. We'll have a SMS campaign starting in January 2025, as well as a full multimedia campaign running from January to May of 2025, as well as any other outreach opportunities that come to us as potential sources of education for landlords. Some challenges we faced. The first one has been the tight turnaround from receiving funds in July, and from July through having to have something implemented for September 1st. So working with state purchasing to expedite these processes for both phases has been something we've been working on. There was a limited number of lead inspectors and lead prepared professionals in the state to answer the call. There was limited funding for lower income landlords to support repair costs, and there has been some challenges with historic homes. So some of these challenges we've worked to address. September 1st of 2024, we had 38 licensed lead inspectors, and only about 30 of those were active in the field. Since October 24th, we have licensed an additional 32 inspectors. I held 2 8-hour training courses for out-of-state inspectors to get them licensed in the Rhode Island through license reciprocity, and then 3 additional in-state inspectors have finished their apprenticeship and were licensed. Currently, there's no lead inspector class scheduled because there's only one licensed training provider in the state for lead inspectors. But while rigorous, our state regulations for licensing are consistent with other states. And the one thing has been about pricing. The State Department of Health doesn't regulate pricing. However, with the increased supply of lead inspectors, since we've basically doubled those in the field, we're hoping that pricing is going to stabilize across the board. Other challenges that we have heard about are funding for the lead repairs. So as Alice and I mentioned, there's the Providence Lead Safe program and the Woonsocket Lead Safe program. And then at Housing Network of Rhode Island, the revolving fund mentioned that they did have funds for property owners. So one challenge is that without additional funding, some landlords might need to raise rent to cover costs. A lead safe repair workforce. There's been an increased demand for licensed lead professionals. So for lead abatement, we're trying to get 8 more asbestos contractors to become lead contractors, and through a course that we're holding at the end of January. And then we recently held a program at the DOC where we've just gotten 14 inmates trained, and once upon release, they'll get licensed to be certified lead workers. And then we're going to hold some other programs there to for inmates to get RRP training, which is renovation, repair, and painting training, which allows them to do lead safe work. And one of the biggest challenges has been with historic homes. So it's very expensive to make historic homes lead safe, especially with the old wood windows. What we have done is trying to amend some guidance with double hung windows to help out those homes which don't have functioning double hung windows, where it's just, as long as we can ensure safety, we just made some amendments with some of the guidelines for those types of windows in historic homes. And that's basically what we have to present.
Happy to answer any questions.